Can you talk about the place that Face has occupied in the festival over all these years? Granted, it's never been performed in the big house, but...
Well, it wouldn't be right in the big house. But you know that the Face was commissioned for the centennial anniversary of the Opera House itself, 1978. And that was when Bob Darling was running the company. It was his first season, as a matter of fact. And Henry was somebody I had known for a long time before then, and had lost touch with him. Henry was in one of my accompaniment classes at New England Conservatory years before, and he had written an opera, or part of an opera, on the story of Goodman Brown, which, and the students got together and they did a performance of this fragment in Recital Hall at school. And I've lost touch with Henry over the years. When he was in school at the conservatory, excuse me, he was in a class of mine, piano accompaniment class. And he'd written an opera on the story of Goodman Brown, colonial times. And students had gotten together and actually put together a performance of it, which I went to, and was very impressed. Obviously, it was a big town. I'd never heard any of his compositions before. And I said to Henry, if you're going to do opera, then you've got to get into an opera company and find out how all this works. And so we arranged for him to go see David Lloyd, who was running Lake George Opera at the time. And then Henry was off and running an opera, and then after that, as you probably know, the New York City Opera, he was rehearsal pianist there. And so he got a good taste of what the real business was like. Then I lost touch with Henry until suddenly he appeared here, 78, which was my first season with this company also, conducting various things. And there was this piece called The Face on the Barroom Floor. I went to a rehearsal and I was stunned by how beautiful it was and how he had advanced so much as a composer with, of course, beautiful vocal writing. And I said to Henry, after I heard a rehearsal, I said, Henry, this is absolutely wonderful. Italian will out, won't it? And he said, well, yes. He said, when you're in school, they teach you how to make things difficult. And this sings, you know, it does sing. And music of Henry's that I've come in contact with since then has always sung. Whether it's instrumental music or vocal music, it sings.
One observation that I've seen is that particularly Face sings and moves at the same time.
Oh yes, oh yes. He wrote a group of 4 songs, he called them 4 Simple Songs, which he dedicated to me. And I've done it with several sopranos who love to do it. Then, of course, it was time for us to do a commission in the early 2002, 2001, so when we had the idea of doing a commission. And we wanted to do a story that had local color, but was not merely anecdotal Colorado, you know. And I fastened on the story of Clara Brown. And Henry was the obvious person to write the piece, having been here, because he was here in 79 and 80, conducting other things. And so we were off and running with Gabriel's daughter.
But going back to Face, though, what place has it occupied in the festival since then?
Oh,
it's
that was your question, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Before I went drifting off.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Well, we did it. We've done Face nearly every year since 1978. In fact, every year except last year, when we had done it so many times, and so many people had seen it so many times, we thought we'd give it a rest. No, it wasn't last year, it was 2 years. 2 years. We gave it a rest. But now I see in the brochure they say, Face, it's back! So people are ready to start enjoying those 2 murders again. So I like to point out, 2 murders within 25 minutes, you can't beat it. That's opera.
But has it been part of the subscription, or has it been
Oh,
kind of a little add-on?
It's an add-on, what we used to call surround programs. And now they call them festival, no, then we call them festival extras. And there's some new term, I've forgotten what it is now. Yeah, it's an add-on.
Some people have called Face an underground opera. What do you think about that?
Underground? What's underground about?
Underground, it means that, you know, a lot of people know about it, but it's not mainstream, it's not...
Oh, that way. Well, I don't know if it's not, well, it's not mainstream like La Traviata or Tosca, but then it's not a full-length opera either, which means it's not going to be done as a feature presentation at the Metropolitan Opera or San Francisco Opera. However, Henry will tell you that it's been done in a million places all over. It's a great favorite for, in college workshops, because you can do it anywhere. In fact, we do it not exactly anywhere, but the first 4 years, 78, 79, 80, 81, when Bob Darling was running the company, we did all performances of it in the bar, in the Face bar, which was a pain in the butt for people who were running the bar, because you have to close it down an hour in advance and get everything prepared, and then you have to keep it closed after the performance, and have customers outside with their noses pressed to the glass wondering what the devil is going on in there. When I started running things in 1983, I thought it would be more practical to move it across the street into the stables. And we had a face painted not on the floor, but on a piece of plywood so it could be removed. And that way we could do more performances. And then at the end of the season, one performance in the bar, which was always a very special thing. And there is something about doing it in the bar, which is a little creepy. The acoustics are they're difficult to work with because of the reverberation in there. You can't do any lighting effects. It's crowded. There's not much room for the actors, but it's creepy.
Tell me more. Creepy. How do you mean creepy? What's it feel like?
Oh, it's a chill when you think, well, here these kids are doing it, but as they start doing it, you get lost in the story itself, and then you begin to think that you are back there. When they go back in time, you know, you think that you are back there, and when she gets shot, you feel bad for her. But then, when we go back into the present, at the end when she gets shot, and the bartender says, "Madeline?" I always get in fact, just talking about it now, I get the hair on the back of my neck stands up. Yeah, it's really spooky.
Speaking of spooky, Teller House is known for its ghosts. Lady across the street told me all about them.
The lady across the street.
Yeah, at the Welcome Center.
Oh, yeah. No.
She's never seen them. She doesn't believe in them, but
Yeah.
everybody's told them.
Right, everybody, yes. No, there are no good ghosts there. I don't think. But, you know, if you listen to people around Central City, there isn't a building here that doesn't have ghosts. They're all over the place. However, having said that, a friend of mine some years ago was working as a volunteer for the Opera Association. And one of her jobs was to go through the Opera House and dust off. We used to have those kitchen chairs in there for years. And she was in there one time, the curtain was closed on the stage. She was dusting off the chairs and all that. And she heard rehearsal going on behind the curtain. She said, "Wow, they're really working." A play, because they used to do a play in August up here. And so she went out the side door backstage to get some clean rags and looked out on the stage, and it was empty. They thought, well, that's strange, they must have gone home. Went back into the theater, and the rehearsal was still going on behind the curtain. And she swears this is true.
Wow. Do you think Helen Hayes was in on it? Do you think Mae West was there?
Mae West, when she was here, lived across the street, you know. They put her up in Penrose, across from the Opera House. She had a chauffeur, of course, and and many other male attendants. But the chauffeur would pick her up there across the street, drive up Eureka Street, turn around and come back, let her off in front of the Opera House.
Was she worth it, or weren't you around then?
I wasn't around. That was
1949, I think.
The billboard is hanging over in the stables. I forget what the year was, but yeah, Diamond Lil.
Yeah.
People still talk about it.
Really? Why?
Yeah. But, well, apparently she had a whole entourage. I think it was a cast of Mae West and I don't know how many men in a play that she had written herself.
Well, that's a myth. She didn't write any of those plays
is that
herself.
right?
She would buy them from other people and put her own little,
yeah.
her one-liners in there.
But she could get away with it.
Yeah.
Her and Al Jolson.
Speaking of face, though, what do singers stand to gain from learning and performing face?
It's a gig.
I'm talking artistically.
Oh, artistically.
Yes.
Well, but then you see, I ran this company for 16 years, so I have to think about the practical side of things. And ran it in the black, by the way. Made operatic history. But anyway, artistically, well, it happens to be 3 very good roles, especially for young singers. So it's a good addition to anybody's repertoire. There is that.
It's pretty compact. A
Oh,
lot
yeah.
happens in a short period of time.
25 minutes.
Got to turn on a dime.
Beautiful character writing.
Tell me about that. What tells you that there's beautiful character writing?
Because they are established immediately. Now that's not only Henry, but it's also John Bowman who wrote the libretto. But as soon as they come on, as soon as they open their mouths, you have an idea of who these people are. The trick for the 3 performers is when they go back in time, the characters are entirely different. And they have to make that switch very quickly. It's easiest for the soprano because in the present day section, she's a nice girl in the chorus here. They don't say apprentice, but no, that's what it is. Nice girl in the chorus. And the tenor is a jackass. Oh, she's a nice girl in the chorus, but then when it goes
Could you do that
back
again?
in
You're hitting the.
when it goes back in time.
Now you can start again. Sorry.
Yeah. And when the opera begins, she's a nice girl in the chorus. But when they go back in time, she's this bar girl who's hard as nails. So that's nice, easy way to make the shift in character. The tenor in the first part is a bit of a jackass, a loudmouth, a boring person. And then when you go back in time, he's this beaten down old miner who's had life has beaten the crap out of him, you know. The bartender is the hardest because he has the frustrated love interest in both times. So he has to really work to make a difference between the 2 characters.
And the tenor?
You did the tenor.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, sorry. Now, let's talk a bit more about running the company in the black. Central City historically...
One of my favorite topics, yes.
Yeah. Historically, Central City has been a bit of a, shall we say, boom and bust.
Yes.
And it boomed in the early 90s, and now I wouldn't say it's busting, but it's fading a bit.
You're talking about Central City?
Central City.
Yeah.
Now, how tethered is the opera company to the town? How much are you affected by the rising and falling of the town's fortunes?
The Opera Association has never been tethered to the town. However, the town has been tethered to the Opera Association. In the early 30s, this was 4 steps away from being a ghost town. The houses were all run down, there was nothing further on Main Street. Mining had gone bust for a long time. The population was 1/5 of what 1/10 of what it had been in the glory days. And the theater was closed and deteriorated. It was the Opera Association and the opera that brought the town back to life. And people said, well, this is a strange place to have an opera company. Well, it is kind of a weird place. But you have to know how it came to be, how the miners built this theater for themselves and loved the building and wanted it preserved, and a few people did what they could to keep the theater going during the bad days, especially in the 1920s. It was very bad. So there was the Opera Association that brought people back up here to performances, and not just people from Denver and around, but in the 30s and 40s, when there was very little going on in the summer, people came from all over the country here to the Opera Festival, and the town came back to life. Now, there were many people who were influential in the town who didn't like to recognize that then. And so at that time, there was not always a happy relationship between the company and the town. Happy to say that is all quite different now.
I'm told that one thing that has given the opera company a lot of stability is that when property values shot up in the early 90s, when gambling was big here, the opera company owns a lot of property here.
Yes.
So you can house your singers.
Yes.
And you weren't driven out of town the way a lot of long-term townies were.
Oh yes, yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it's they use the word stability. I used to amuse people by saying that before gambling, that when they would say, "How come you have an opera company?" or "How does the opera make out in this town?" I said, "Well, when the most stable business in the town is an opera company, you know there's something weird going on." And that was true then, because when gambling came in, a lot of things changed. Many of the old-timers didn't like the change. Some of them just moved out into the county, some of them moved away. I had my own misgivings about that.
Why?
Because I didn't like what was happening to all the downtown. It was false restoration. You know, most of the Main Street and Lawrence Street, most of the downtown area was rebuilt all at once after a disastrous fire in 1874. That's why it all looks pretty much the same. And those buildings had pretty well deteriorated. Since mining had gone bust, and there was no industry here, nobody had money to fix up the buildings, but they also didn't have money to destroy them. When gambling came in, what people did was tear the guts out of all the buildings because the old floors were not up to code and they could not support the weight of the machines anyway. So they had to do, but they saved the facades at least. We executed a 30-year lease, the telehouse, with a foreign gambling outfit, and got a certain percentage of the drop from all the machines, or the...
What percentage?
I don't know.
You can tell me.
No, I don't know.
No, you can't.
And that enabled us to, plus rent on the teller house, that enabled us to establish an endowment fund, which we'd never had, and which we still have, of course. And there were other advantages too. Historic preservation money, which came from the gambling to the state and then back to the, enabled us to do a lot of repairs on our properties, which were built over 100 years ago and never intended to last this long. And they were in very bad shape most of the time. So a lot of that gambling money helped us a great deal. Although I resented having machines in the little kingdom room downstairs and machines in the slot machines over in the what had been a lovely dining room over on the other side of the building, and machines upstairs in the Eureka room You know, I really hated it. But
Well, also, you know, gambling people and opera people are very different.
yes,
Did
there
the
was very little correspondence between them.
Yeah. Did the incongruity of it all ever bother you or amuse you or?
No, that didn't bother me at all. I just didn't like the whole idea. Well, gambling came in the fall of 1991, and the spring of 1992, we opened the season. I programmed Faust to open the season. It's a story about a man who made a pact with the devil. Very few people got that, but I had my own private little enjoyment about it. Yes.
So, how big is the endowment right now, roughly?
Well, now it's somewhere around 8-9 million because of
The stock market.
of just things being down. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has been as high as 10 and 11, and it will go back up again.
Can I ask a question, man? It's the gambling it's a symbiotic relationship, and you don't necessarily like, you know, the shark doesn't like the little pilot fish that eats off of it, but it certainly gets clean because of it, and in return the shark doesn't eat the pilot fish. And
We got the hotel back, and in the meantime, those people, well, this building was falling apart too. We didn't have the money to do anything about it. It was falling apart from below. There is a river that runs under this building, well, a creek, Eureka Creek, and it runs under the Opera House too. And it was washing away the foundation. Well, they rebuilt the foundation from inside, not an easy task. And the 4th floor had been condemned. No one was supposed to go up there. They went through, there's a lot of steel now holding up the whole building. Some of it's disguised, some of it's a little obvious. In the hallway, at the top of the stairway, you'd say, well, I wonder what these things have been painted in, you know, we try to disguise it. But we didn't have the money to do that. They saved the building. See, there was always one side with great advantages and another side with just, you know, filthy gambling going on.
well, it's the definition of ambivalence.
Yes, yeah.
But what was Central City like before gambling came in? Was it headed towards being a ghost town again?
In the winter, yes. That's why they wanted the gambling. Because we had a lot of shops on Main Street. It was a place where families came up on the weekends or during the week, and they were going into the souvenir shops and restaurants. There were some great restaurants here. Not casino food, but good restaurants. A nice green parlor, and you know, it was a fun place to go. And a fun place for us. But the shopkeepers, the business people, had to make all their money in 3 months for the whole year. Then in the winter, everything closed down. And that's why they fought for gambling.
Cut to more modern times. I know that many communities in the area suffer from rampant crystal meth addiction. You know about that, of course, don't you?
I didn't know it was a rampant thing. I just know that it's rotten stuff.
Yeah. I was at the gym the other day, and people were complaining at length about it. You know?
Really?
Yeah. I take it that hasn't in any way touched your operation at all.
No.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
We do have a dispensary or two down on Main Street for medical marijuana, but I don't know if anybody in the company has prescriptions for medical marijuana.
So tell me about the summer culture within the opera company.
Yeah.
You have young apprentices full of vim and vigor. I see them rehearsing at the end of the day, and they're still popping. Yeah. And you've got stars coming in. You have the venerable Britain conductor Stuart Bedford. Yeah.
Who is a very friendly human being, by the way. I don't know if you talk with him, but yes, he's venerable. But he's just like everybody else, and that's the way things tend to be here, and that's the way things have always been within the Opera Association. I've been around for a long time, but I keep running into people back east who say, "Oh, Central City, I was there in the '60s, and it was the most wonderful summer of my life. I never had such a good time." Because there's a lot of social life within the company. and social life with some of the locals. Some of the locals mix in.
We were just remarking the two sopranos who were singing the soprano and the cover who were singing female lead in Face. Lovely people, no attitude, talent. How do you find them?
Well, no, that's something that has to be taken into account because of the fact that here everybody sees the same faces day after day after day for the entire summer. And so if we hear about somebody who is a difficult person, then we tend to avoid those because it would be disruptive in the company. And you have auditions for the young people. In 7 minutes, you've got to not only find out if they can sing, if they can move, if they can act, how the languages are, but also what kind of personality is this. And I must say, over the years, we have made very few miscalculations that way. Every once in a while, there's somebody who doesn't work out the way we thought we were going to work out, and then they tend to poison the group. Pagan is my illegitimate son. Don't take that too seriously, of course, but we have an underground newspaper here in Central City. It's called The Little Kingdom Come, published by a man who poses as a lunatic. His name is Luke Cady, and he's not a lunatic at all. He's a very brilliant man, but he likes this pose, and he puts out this paper, and one never knows whether what you're reading is true or fiction, because he mixes them up. And he printed one time that I don't know what prompted that Jeff Hagan was my illegitimate son. So I went, well, it's in print, so it must be true. And the joke has persisted. Jake is, of course, a wonderful local character, who, again, has a pose. And then you start to talk to him, and you find out that he reads history all the time. He's very literate. He's from Pennsylvania somewhere, maybe Philadelphia. I don't know. His family back there, but he likes to come on as somebody who's just kind of spending his life in this little mining camp up in the mountains, this little hick town, and enjoys the thing.
He told us,
Jeff
told us that he was a super in Carmen one year, and he almost fell off the stage mid-performance.
Yeah, well, yes, Jeff used to imbibe quite a bit, and there was one, he was in the procession in the last act, and I was conducting down there, and along came the procession, along came Jeff, who suddenly was walking out of line and headed right for the pit. It's like, back! And somehow he managed to get back in line and into the bull ring without causing any disturbance. But he has since given up demon rum.
But you never hired him as a super again.
Well, I mean, once burned, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen with Jeff. Sometimes there's a knock at my door, and there it is, Jeff, and his specialty is cooking lasagna, which is his own special recipe, which is you open the refrigerator and find out what's in there and throw that in. And he comes in with a frozen block of it for me.
I have a question about Jeff. How many of the denizens, the people who live here, are embedded into the opera?
They mushroom up out of the soil. They come up out of the mine shafts. I don't know where they come from, but there have always been characters like that around here. Even some of the people who look rather normal. There's this woman who used to do the tours here in the Teller House for the tourists. I won't name it. She published a couple of books. And I went past one day when she was telling the most outrageous things about, that's what these stories about ghosts and the Teller House come, people like her. Most outrageous things about this building. And I said, Mary, you can't go right. Saying, well, she said they like to hear it.
Can you tell me the story of the face on the Teller floor? What is the history of that?
Well,
as you know it.
As I got it from Pancho Gates. You know who Pancho Gates was? No. Frank Gates was here in the 30s. And when Robert Edmund Jones came to direct Camille, and then he remained connected with the association up until World War II. Pancho worked as his assistant. Then he worked for the Opera Association for decades. He painted scenery. He made props. He was stage manager. He built scenery. He did all kinds of stuff. And ended up, eventually, when I was here, he was caretaker of the Opera House. Pancho knew everything about everybody. Now, there are so many stories about how the face cake could be painted. And I asked Pancho about it. And he told me, because he was there, when they acquired the Teller, this building, in the early 30s, the face bar had wallpaper all over the walls. When they steamed off the wallpaper, they discovered those murals that are underneath, and thought they were wonderful, and because the whole room is a mess. So Alan True, Alan True, who was a member of the board of directors, Denver artist, did a lot of work in the state capitol, as a matter of fact. And Pascal Quackenbush, that was his real name, local artists, were engaged to restore the murals and the painting on the ceiling, which is very nice, they are. They also engaged Herndon Davis to work on the murals, Denver artist. You can Google him just quite a bit. There was one evening when Davis was working here, and Pancho was helping him, because Pancho did painting also, I mean, you know, real painting also. And they'd been hitting the bottle through the whole thing, and finally finished their work for the day. And the whole building was being renovated, especially the first floor being renovated. People were supposed to be coming in the next morning to sand the floor for the refinishing. That was the final touch for that room, to sand the floor. And so, just as a lark, and to help finish off the bottle, Herndon Davis decided to paint a picture of his fiancée on the floor, inspired by that Victorian poem, which has nothing to do with us, has to do with the Klondike gold rush. It was just a lark, and Pancho helped him a little bit, you know, holding, I don't know what he did, but anyway, he was there. So they left, and Davis did not sign it because he thought it was going to be disappearing the next morning. The men came in and they saw this thing, fascinated by it, they sanded all around it. And the floor was refinished all around this. And it got to be kind of an attraction. And people started talking about it. And people associated it with the Victorian poem. Finally, it got to be so popular that they put that brass rail around it so that people wouldn't walk on it. Davis, who was kind of an ornery character, I understand, at one point got angry because he was getting no credit for the paint. So he came up with paints one day and signed it. And the powers that be here waited until he got down the hill and then took out the rags and the turpentine and removed the signature on the picture. Because, although they didn't say it outright, they wanted to give the impression that that face had inspired the poem instead of the other way around. There was always a little sign on the brass rail, and it didn't tell lies, but it intimated and that it was the other way around, and it did not date the painting, because that would spill the beans. There's a new sign on there now which tells the truth, so by Hunter Davis and the year and all that kind of business. And we sell copies of the poem.
I still believe, though, that the face would not be such an attraction if it wasn't somehow strangely entrancing.
Well, it is. I mean, you look at it, and it looks as though that face is coming up out of the floorboards. There's something strange. The copies that we've made to use over when we do the piece don't give that impression at all.
But the eyes, there's something in the eyes. She's maybe a little hunted. She's kind of looking back over, you know.
Yeah, maybe she was looking forward. She became his wife. Her name was Juanita something. She became Davis's wife.
Are there any photos of her?
You know, that's a very good question. I don't know.
I actually think Dave Forsyth, actually, I think he has one of the Guild
Oh
Historical
yeah,
Society.
he would have it. If anybody had it, he would have it.
He sure does.
Pancho was never comfortable, he told me all this. Pancho was never comfortable with he considered it fraudulent what the association was doing, misleading people with that. And when the opera was written, he came to a performance of it and he was very upset because, of course, it's fictitious, but he thought it was perpetuating the fraud of the face inspiring the Victorian poem.
So it sounds as if the opera company and the face have also had a strangely symbiotic
Yeah, well,
relationship.
the association, yes.
Yes.
Yes, right. Right from the beginning of the association, almost, the early years. 32 was the association, and I think 34 was when the restorations were happening downstairs.
Yeah, and how has the opera company profited from the presence of the face?
Well, I don't think the opera company has profited from it.
Oh, benefit.
Well, just from publicity standpoint. I mean, tourists come in all the time and they look at the face and then they go out, they don't drop money at the bar. Some people do, but if a tourist comes in to look at the face, they just want to look at the face.
Has the face helped attendance at the opera?
No,
of the face on the barroom floor opera?
Oh, probably so. People drop in, you know, because as you pointed out, it's not part of the opera. Face opera is not part of the subscription series anytime. So you can buy a single ticket for it. So you know, look at the face and say, oh, look, there's an opera. Let's go.
I think we should start wrapping this up. We'd like to do one more thing.
Yeah,
Yes, okay.
One more question. One very important part of Central City for me is its commitment to new and lesser known work. You know, this year it's Turn the Screw, next year it's Smitten as the Kiss, and that is how it has been, you know, throughout your administration. What is it like trying to sell something like this in such an unlikely setting for an opera house?
You mean Central City?
Well, your audience basically draws from Denver, right?
Yes, but also Denver and the Front Range primarily.
Right, but I mean, how much of a challenge has it been selling little known pieces such as Turn to the Screw to that public?
Yeah, well, it's difficult, and it's a matter of marketing. When we did Gloriana, that was Pat Pierce who programmed that. There was a big and very clever, let's say, marketing program that went through the whole winter beforehand. And that sold very well, as I recall. They did marketing this year for Turn of the Screw, playing up the supernatural ghost story aspects of the opera. And I don't know if that worked quite as well. I don't think it was as intensive as that Gloriana project was. I thought that was a super job of salesmanship.
But one thing that one can say is that with Gloriana and Turn of the Screw, if they're done well, those are operas that deliver.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, Gloriana
all
has
delivers if it's done well.
Yeah.
It's fabulous opera composer.
I mean, Gloriana has a reputation for being a problem opera, but it's not if it's done well. It's not a problem at all.
Well, it's a problem because it's big. and for a small stage, it's very big. But Ken Kazan directed that. It was marvelous how he was able to do that on this small stage.
And you've also done Aida. You've done big things there. How do you do that?
Clever design. That was Aida was Robert O'Hearn. He was a genius of a designer. He did things before. Right? Robert Edmund Jones was the patron saint of this organization during the 30s up to the World War. He brought in Donald Owenslager to design something during that time. And Owenslager designed, I don't know how many productions after the war, during the 40s, 50s, 60s, including the first Baby Doll. So, and then O'Hearn did a lot of things here. We've had very good designers in this place. And it takes a good designer to make that stage look the way it does. Miguel Romero later on, Michael Anania, both excellent designers.